They said she was cursed, a woman born on the outskirts of the kingdom, a quiet figure who kept to herself after tragedy hollowed out her life. Her neighbors whispered that misfortune followed her like a shadow, and soon those whispers turned to accusations, then to fear, and finally to cruelty. One winter night, they chased her through the village, grown men with torches, children screaming insults, and women hurling stones as if driving away a stray animal. She didn't fight back. She didn't even shout. She simply ran with the look of someone who had already lost everything. But what none of them knew, what not a single one of her tormentors could have imagined, was that the day would come when every one of those same neighbors, the same voices that condemned her, would stand at her door, begging her for protection, not out of guilt, not out of kindness, but out of pure, desperate survival. Before we begin this extraordinary, true-life tale of betrayal, power, and the most unexpected reversal of fortune, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss the stories history tried to bury. In the winter of 1312, in the borderlands between the Crown of Aragon and the County of Foix, there stood a small agrarian village named Serravall. It was a place where every harvest depended on the discipline of the soil, where every life depended on the will of the local lord, and where suspicion traveled faster than truth. In such a world, a woman alone was already a rarity. A woman alone with a sharp mind, a quiet manner, and a past no one quite understood. That was enough to turn curiosity into fear. Her name was Alaine Marin. For most of the villagers, Alaine had always been an odd figure. She lived in a stone cottage near the edge of the forest, knew how to read when even the steward struggled with letters, and earned her living tending herbs and healing wounds. She did not gossip. She did not flatter. She did not attend the feasts unless invited. She carried herself with a calm, too calm, some said, like a person who had lived through storms harsher than any this valley could produce. But Serravall was not merely a place of crops and cattle. It was a place governed by fear of the unknown, held together by customs older than any parchment record. And when people fear what they do not understand, the object of that fear rarely has the chance to explain itself. The turning point came in early December, after the sudden illness of a miller's child. The boy's fever rose violently, and in a panic, his mother rushed to Elaine's cottage. She begged her to help, promising anything in return. Alaine refused no one in need. She walked through the bitter cold to the mill house and tended to the child until his fever calmed. But before dawn, the boy worsened, and by sunrise, he died. And just like that, grief demanded a culprit. The mother, broken by loss, claimed Alaine's herbs had poisoned the boy's body instead of healing it. A claim that made no sense to anyone knowledgeable, but knowledge mattered less than rage. Within hours, rumors swarmed the village like insects. A woman who did not laugh, who did not marry again after her husband's death, who knew too much about plants. Surely she was dangerous. By the second morning, the whispers had turned sharp. By the third, someone threw a stone at her door. And on the fourth night, the village turned on her completely. They accused her in the square without trial, without evidence, without decency. The parish priest, pressured by the crowd, muttered something about unnatural practices and God's displeasure. The steward did nothing. He cared more for keeping order than seeking truth. So the mob grew confident. fueled by a righteousness as blind as it was bruising. They dragged her from her cottage, tore her shawl, and chased her through the snow like a hunted beast. Men shouted that she had cursed the miller's son. Women spat that she had brought misfortune to marriages. Even children laughed, because adults had taught them to. Alaine didn't look back. She ran through the icy fields, the torchlight flickering behind her like angry fireflies. Her hands bled from falling on frozen ground. Her breath tore through her lungs. She knew if they caught her, she would not survive the night. For a moment, she considered disappearing into the forest entirely, living as a hermit, rather than returning to the cruelty of Serravall. But as the world around her blurred into white and shadow, she realized something vital. She did not run because she feared them. She ran because she feared what the lord of these lands might do if he learned his villagers had executed a healer without his consent. Serravall belonged to Lord Trevel, a man infamous for two things: his lack of mercy and his appetite for absolute obedience. If a riot had taken place in his domain without his hand directing it, someone would pay dearly. Alaine, dizzy with cold, reached the old watchtower ruins and collapsed inside. She stayed there the rest of the night, shaking, bruised, humiliated, but alive. When morning came, she wrapped her torn cloak tighter and made a decision she had sworn never to make again. She would go to Lord Trevel's castle, not for revenge, but because she needed protection. Protection from the very people she had once mended and fed. She arrived at the castle gates by noon, escorted inside by guards who recognized her name. After all, Alaine's late husband had once served the Lord directly. Trevel would at least grant her an audience. But when she entered the great hall, she found Lord Trevel was not surprised to see her. In fact, he smiled, as though expecting her. "Alaine Marin," he said, rising from his seat. "You returned to me at last." She froze. At last? Before she could question him, a door opened behind the throne, and someone stepped out. Someone she had believed was dead for nearly 5 years. Her husband, alive, and standing beside the very man who now ruled Serravall. For a moment, the hall blurred around Alaine, as if her mind refused to stitch the scene into reality. The man standing beside Lord Trevel wore her husband's face, the same dark hair, the same narrow shoulders, the same scar on his jaw from a hunting accident years ago. But the eyes were different, harder, guarded, eyes that had learned to survive in ways she could not yet grasp. Her voice trembled before she could control it. "Mathieu," but the man did not answer her. Instead, he inclined his head stiffly, as one might greet a stranger. Lord Trevel watched the exchange with calm amusement, tapping his fingers against the carved armrest of his chair. "You believed him dead," Trevel said, as if discussing the weather. "A misunderstanding that served its purpose for a time." Alaine felt her stomach tighten. "He disappeared during the northern raid. They said his body was never found because it never fell," Trevel replied. "Your husband was taken, captured. He survived, barely." His gaze sharpened. "And I was the one who ransomed him. I saved his life." Mathieu finally spoke, his voice low and hoarse, as though unused. "I returned as a servant of the Lord, who paid in gold when no one else would." Alaine searched his expression for warmth, recognition, grief, anything. but she saw nothing but a wall built from loyalty and fear. "You didn't send word," she whispered. "Not once." Mathieu looked away. "I was told you had remarried and left Serravall." Alaine's breath stilled. She understood immediately. Someone had lied to him, deliberately, strategically, but to what end? Lord Trevel smiled slightly. "Wounded men are easy to guide, especially those who believe their lives have unraveled." The truth struck her. Trevel had not merely saved her husband, he had shaped him, molded him, and used the lie of her absence to sever the last tie that might have competed with his authority. But why reveal all of this to her now? Trevel leaned forward, his eyes narrowing with predatory calm. "Your village's little spectacle last night reached my ears long before you arrived. Peasants turning on one of their own without permission is disorder, and disorder is a disease." He stood. "I intend to make an example of Serravall." Alaine felt the floor beneath her shift. "Punish the entire village. They acted against one under my protection," Trevel replied coolly. "A healer, a woman whose knowledge I value more than their superstitions." He looked at Mathieu. "Your husband informed me of your skill long ago." Mathieu flinched slightly, as if the confession cost him something. Trevel's gaze slid back to her. "I will not tolerate chaos. Serravall will learn obedience." Alaine's pulse quickened. She thought of the same villagers who had chased her like animals, men who had spat in her face, women who had lied, children who had mocked her tears. In another life, she might have welcomed their punishment, but destruction, even of the cruel, does not heal what cruelty created. "Spare them," she said quietly. Trevel's brows lifted with interest. "Why?" "Because fear is already killing them," she replied. "They acted out of grief and ignorance, not rebellion against you. If you destroy the village, you confirm their fear of shadows and punishments. You make them smaller, not wiser." Trevel studied her with unsettling stillness, as if her words were stones he weighed in his palm. After a moment, he exhaled softly. "You are different from what they claim. Good." He paced a slow circle around her. "Then perhaps there is a better use for Serravall than its destruction." She felt the shift of danger in the room, as sudden and sharp as a blade drawn inches from flesh. "What do you want?" she asked. "A loyal administrator," he said simply. "Someone the villagers fear but also depend upon. Someone educated. Someone with no ties strong enough to challenge me, and no illusions about the nature of power." Alaine felt the trap close. "You want me to govern them, to govern for me," he corrected. "Serravall will kneel to authority, and they will kneel to you, because I will command it." Mathieu shifted, tension in his frame. "My lord," he said softly, "they won't accept her." "They will," Trevel said, "if I break them first." Alaine's breath trembled. She saw the path Trevel laid before her. Power carved from fear. Influence wielded like a blade. Vengeance disguised as responsibility. And Mathieu was part of it. The husband she had mourned, resurrected not by faith, but by manipulation. Trevel returned to his chair with a look that ended the conversation. "You will serve me, Alaine Marin, whether you choose to or not." A guard stepped behind her, his hand brushing the hilt of his sword. The message was unmistakable. But before she could speak, before she could argue, accept or refuse, the hall doors burst open. A messenger, breathless and pale, fell to his knees. "My lord, Serravall, there has been an attack." Trevel stiffened. "By whom?" The messenger swallowed hard. Your soldiers, my lord, they've turned on each other, and the villagers have risen up. Serravall is in open revolt. Alaine froze. The village that had chased her into the night, the same people who despised her, had done the unthinkable. They had rebelled against Lord Trevel. The hall fell into a suffocating silence, broken only by the messenger's shuddering breaths. Serravall, a village known for its submission, a village that bowed its head rather than risk a lash, had risen up against Lord Trevel, against trained soldiers. Trevel rose slowly from his chair, his expression turning to stone. Explain. The messenger swallowed hard. At dawn, 2 of your men began arguing in the square over orders. One claimed you had commanded strict retaliation against the villagers. The other insisted no such order existed. The quarrel grew violent. Swords were drawn. The villagers tried to intervene. Then more soldiers joined the fight. And then he hesitated, trembling. The villagers armed themselves. How many? Trevel demanded. Nearly all of them, my lord. Alaine felt her heart twist. These were the same people who had thrown stones at her cottage, who had believed the worst of her without listening. Yet in their desperation, they had done something unthinkable in Trevel's lands. They had chosen courage over obedience. Trevel turned his gaze to Alaine, sharp as a blade pressed to skin. You see what chaos breeds. You pity them, and they answer pity with rebellion. Alaine lifted her chin, refusing to cower. People do not rise unless they feel cornered. You created that fear, not I. Mathieu stepped between them, voice steady but strained. My lord, if Serravall is in revolt, the situation may be more volatile than you think. They know they face punishment for attacking your men. Desperation makes men reckless. Reckless, Trevel repeated softly. Then they will learn what recklessness costs. A commander approached, awaiting orders. Trevel didn't hesitate. Prepare 30 riders. Serravall will be subdued by nightfall. Alaine stepped forward. If you march now, you will slaughter them. Women, children, families. Trevel cut her off with a cold glare. They lost the privilege of mercy. You don't need mercy, Alaine replied, voice tight with urgency. You need stability. Kill them, and the nearby villages will hear the rumors before dawn. They will fear you, but fear alone does not hold a land together. Fear cracks, fear spreads, and one day, fear turns on its master. A flicker of irritation crossed Trevel's face, because she was right, and he knew it. She pushed further. Let me go in your name. They know me. Their guilt will make them listen. I can calm them before blood is spilled. Trevel stared at her, weighing intention against advantage. Finally, he said, You wish to save them. Very well. Go, and if you fail, Serravall burns. Mathieu tensed. My lord, allow me to escort her. Trevel shook his head. You belong at my side. She goes alone, or not at all. Alaine held Mathieu's gaze for a brief moment, long enough to see confusion, conflict, and something deeper flicker beneath his hardened exterior. But there was no time to unravel him. Not now. Within minutes, she was on horseback, riding towards Serravall under a gray winter sky. The cold gnawed at her bones, but her mind burned with the memory of the night she fled, the torches, the screams, the humiliation. And yet here she was, riding back to save the same people who had tried to destroy her. She didn't do it out of forgiveness. She did it because vengeance offered nothing but ashes. As she approached Serravall, smoke curled into the air, not from fire, but from torches and hastily built barricades. The villagers had armed themselves with pitchforks, axes, and whatever metal they could salvage. When they saw her, a ripple of shock tore through the crowd. "It's her," someone whispered. "She came back," another murmured. Then the miller's wife, the same woman who had accused her, who had thrown the first stone, stepped forward with trembling hands. "Please," the woman whispered, her eyes shining with fear. "We didn't know what else to do. Trevel's men were turning on each other. We thought he would blame us." Alaine dismounted slowly, her gaze sweeping across faces she knew too well, faces that once twisted with hatred now bore the lines of panic and shame. "You should fear what you caused," Alaine said softly, "but you should fear even more what Trevel will do if you continue this." The villagers murmured, restless and frightened. "What choice do we have?" an elder asked. "We will all die if he arrives." "You won't," Alaine replied. "Not if you put down your weapons. Not if you show Trevel that you submit." "But he will punish us," the miller's wife said desperately. "He always punishes." Alaine's voice steadied into something stronger, something that felt unfamiliar even to her. "Not if he sees you are valuable to him. He listens to strength, not defiance. Unite behind one person who speaks for you, and he will negotiate instead of slaughter." The villagers exchanged confused glances. "Who?" someone asked. Alaine hesitated. She knew Trevel had brought her husband back to twist her life, to make her indebted. She knew Serravall had betrayed her, but she also knew this. If anyone else spoke for them, Trevel would crush them. Someone whispered, "Alaine, she's the only one he listens to." "Please," the miller's wife said, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Save us." The irony cut deeper than any blade. The same voices that condemned her now begged for her protection. But before she could answer, the distant sound of hooves rumbled across the frozen fields. Trevel's riders. The villagers panicked, clutching their makeshift weapons. "Put them down," Alaine ordered sharply. "Now!" Something in her tone, certainty, authority, made them obey. The 30 riders approached, circling the village like wolves. Their leader raised his sword, but then he halted. A figure rode ahead of the formation. Mathieu. He should have remained at the castle. Trevel had forbidden him. Yet here he was, eyes fixed on Alaine. He stopped his horse beside her, breathing hard. "I won't let him destroy them," he said quietly. "Or you." The riders shifted uneasily. Mathieu's defiance was unmistakable. Before Alaine could speak, another set of hooves approached, the sound heavier, colder, and far more dangerous. Lord Trevel himself. He rode to the front, face unreadable. The villagers dropped to their knees, trembling. Mathieu held his ground. Alaine stood still as stone. Trevel's eyes swept the scene, then narrowed at the sight of his disobedient soldier. "Mathieu," he said softly, "you defy me." Mathieu tightened his grip on the reins. "I stand with my wife." Trevel's stare sharpened. Then he looked at Alaine. "A healer who leads a village," he murmured, "and a soldier who chooses her over his lord." He leaned forward in the saddle. "Very well. If all of Serravall submits to her authority, then she will rule in my name." Gasps tore through the crowd. Even Mathieu stiffened, but Trevel wasn't finished. He pointed at Alaine. "Your power begins tonight." Then he pointed at the villagers. "Prove your loyalty." He gestured to the man nearest him. "Bring me the one who threw the first stone at her." A shockwave rippled through Serravall. Trevel had offered her rule, but demanded a sacrifice. History shows us that power often rises from the most unlikely places. Those who are underestimated, those pushed aside, mocked, or mistreated can one day become the very pillars others rely on. Yet power always carries a cost, and every choice leaves a mark not only on the world, but on the one who chooses. If you found this story gripping and thought-provoking, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more forgotten histories, hidden truths, and powerful human stories back to life.